All right, Herc. Raul Jimenez started in Wolves' 2-2 draw against Chelsea over the weekend, but again, he failed to score, which has me asking the question, are the problems around Raul Jimenez about the team that surrounds him, or are they about the Mexican striker himself?
Where do we start? It can be a little bit of both, and not just at the club level, because we're seeing the same thing happen to him and the Mexican national team level with El Tri. This is a player that for a better part of his career was never that goal scorer. You can go back to the America days. He wasn't the man, he wasn't the goal scorer. It was Cristian Benitez. He was a facilitator of sorts. And you go to Atletico and he was there, didn't really get an opportunity. When he was at Benfica, never really got a crack at it. Wasn't that type of player there. But as soon as he went from Benfica to Wolves, that 18 months, he wasn't only scoring goals, he was facilitating, he was thriving. Many were mentioning him as one of the best strikers in the world for 18 months. Then that unfortunate incident when David Luiz happens, that clash of heads versus Arsenal and the defender there. And it took him a while to get back to the field. And we're seeing the, I guess you would say, Raul Jimenez of late. So that's on Raul Jimenez of who he's always been. Also, it's not exactly like Wolves is the same team. It's not exactly like the offensive production for the Mexican national team would lead us to believe like he's the one lacking there or the only one lacking of.
So you're focused very much when you talk there about his past, right? The kind of player he wasn't before the stretch at Wolves where he catches fire. And then ultimately, the end of that stretch is where he gets injured. The concern from a Raul Jimenez career perspective, or even more so, Mexican national team perspective, is about his future.
Yeah.
This is not a drought of a guy who just stopped scoring goals. This is a drought from a guy who had a very serious injury. What's your confidence level that Raul Jimenez can get back to what he was in those 18 months pre-injury at Wolves, based on what we've seen, not just this weekend, but in recent months?
Not overly confident, because the type of player he was during that 18-month stretch was a very good player, especially in the air. He had one of the better strike rates for a 9 with his head in the Premier League, which is a very competitive league, a very good league. Some would say the best league in the world. And we don't see that. He often plays with that headgear. We don't see the same type of willingness to put his body on the line like we did before, and for good reason. This is a player that, according to his wife, was fighting for his life for a good amount of time there, and is a player who can do other things on the field, and I've always said is more of a facilitator than an actual goal scorer, but he still scored the goals. He's not scoring the goals, and that is worrisome. It's worrisome at the club level with Wolves, also at the Mexican national team level, where the competition is lesser, and he's got good enough players around him where they should be doing well, but it's not exactly like Tecatito Corona or Chucky Lozano are lighting up the scoreboards either. And if you look at a player like Raul Jimenez, I spoke about his past. Well, the future isn't necessarily brimming with hope or confidence when you look at the present.
Look, bottom line is, Herc, if you don't score goals, you usually don't keep your spot on the field. However, even though Jimenez has not scored for Wolves, and even though he struggled to score for Mexico, he still maintained those spots. Now, with Mexico, the reality is there aren't all that many other options, and the options that they've tried haven't worked. Rogelio Funes Mori couldn't really do it. Chicharito's an option. Maybe, if Tata Martino decides that he's an option, but until Tata Martino decides that, there are no other options. So Raul Jimenez is going to keep getting rolled out there. That's at least what I think. Now, with Wolves, there aren't a whole lot of other options as well, but Wolves can go out this summer, and they can spend some money, and they've shown that they have that money, and they can do it in the past. And they can go get themselves, Herc, a number 9. And that's the worry for me moving forward, not just for Raul, but for Mexico as well. Wolves can go out and replace him. And where does that leave Raul? Where does that leave El Tri? With months to go before the World Cup and the potential of him, yes, being on a Premier League team, but not being the starting striker, I could almost see a situation where Jimenez this summer might be smart, Herc, might be smart to look for a move.
Yeah, he probably should look for a move, because you're talking about Wolves bringing in players, bringing in another 9. They've not brought in players to really help them. Jota leaves, Traore leaves. Anybody who's ever been of service to Raul is no longer there. The coach, Espiritu Santo, Nuno, he's also gone as well. The coach who brought him in, who believed in him. So it's not exactly like he's got a wealth of options for him to really thrive at, or you could say he's failed with. And if you're talking about the Mexican national team, yeah, he's probably still there or still playing, because there is no Chicharito Hernandez, because Tata has ruled that out for the time being. Henry Martin hasn't really pushed him. Rogelio Funes Mori hasn't been the answer. Santiago Jimenez doesn't really play with Cruz Azul. JJ Macias is on the bench at Chivas. So any way you look at it, Alan Pulido's on the shelf right now, injured at Sporting Kansas City. He's de facto starter, and he's the man until somebody steps up.
All right, we'll leave it there on Raul Jimenez. 6 goals in 31 Premier League appearances so far this season.